Thanks to everyone for joining us, and they're excited to be working with the Watershed Council on this. So in my intro, I mentioned I worked for Huron. Caroline shared the agenda, so we're going to move on to kind of an overview and then tie in some Cheboygan specific things before Nate gets into his update. And then the second half will be gaining insight from everyone here to work together to do a mapping exercise. So let me skip through these because we already did this. Okay. So today we're going to continue to build on this awareness of coastal stormwater and how it can build Cheboygan community health and vibrancy, and then share some potential project ideas. And the outcome here is that we'll have a list of opportunities, ideas, and community connections. And Caroline and I will work together to get both. We'll be generating 2 maps, 2 breakout groups, and combining those to share with everyone and hopefully get a good project list started. So this is the second of a group of 4 programs that Tip of the Mid is putting on. So just really quickly going to do an overview of the first webinar. So we're all on the same page as far as terms. So we're all here today to talk about stormwater runoff. So rainfall and snowmelt that's going to flow over land, over compacted soil or impervious surfaces and go unfiltered into a body of water. So it picks up a lot of pollutants, fertilizers, pesticides, pet waste, salt, and so on. So we also learned in that first webinar that a lot of these issues are due to landscape and land use changes. So these alterations have changed where water ends up and how it gets there. So the picture on the left is a natural area, and then the picture on the right is an urbanized area with about 75 to 100% impervious cover. So we see that decrease in evapotranspiration, that plants are putting this water back into the atmosphere, and also a really large decrease in infiltration into the soil. So about 50 goes from 50% of infiltration to about 15. So this is complicated even more with increased precipitation in recent years, which is predicted to continue in our region. And the systems that most of our communities in northern Michigan have are older, and they're designed just to move water off of land and away from cities as quickly as possible. And now aging infrastructure can't handle these volumes, and it doesn't provide any filtering or treatment, so we end up with water quality issues as well. And a big part of this also has to do with soils, which we'll get into a little bit later. So just to bring this back to Cheboygan, this is just a map. It's hard to see any roads, but this is the city limits of Cheboygan, and you can see that these the dark red colors are reaching that impervious cover that was illustrated in the previous slide. So we have a lot of highly developed areas there, and then less developed in those pink shades. And then we can also look here on which areas are helping us to already have some infiltration and stormwater capacity. So those blues are wetlands, and greens ranging to the tan are forest to grasslands. And I do want this to be a workshop kind of feel, not just a webinar. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just chime in, interrupt me. Because I'll go through this overview stuff pretty fast. So what we're looking at doing, right, is to use natural processes to restore some of these natural cycles. We want more infiltration into the ground, and we want to improve the quality of water that's either running off or infiltrating. So we learned on that first webinar, you know, we can do this private properties or city municipalities can install these. Other terms that are used for these types of activities are low impact development and nature-based solutions. I also wanted to touch on gray infrastructure, which are conventional, drainage and water treatment facilities. So there's a wide range of applications here, and a lot of times this is used in combination with green infrastructure. The picture I have on here on the right is an oil and grit separator we installed in the city of West Branch, Michigan. You can barely see it after everything's completed and the city is able to pump it out once a year. But this lets sediment settle to the bottom, and oils and trash are float on top within that unit. And this was in conjunction with some upstream green infrastructure, rain gardens, and bioswales that reduce the amount of water. And this was kind of an end of pipe solution in addition to those. These won't change the volume of the water, nor do they filter out any soluble pollutants like nutrients and salts. So other examples, we have infiltration techniques such as permeable pavements, rain gardens, bioswales. So all of these are designed and strategically placed to intercept stormwater and allow it to infiltrate into the ground. We also have things like tree canopy, land conservation, which I kind of alluded to in our picture or map of Cheboygan, that these can be really helpful in additional storage and resiliency to things like flooding. Just a quick plug on benefits of tree canopies in cities. So these offer many benefits and can capture and retain as much as over 300 gallons of water at any time. Also help a lot with those nutrient runoffs. And some of these studies that have looked at this planted around parking lots and things, they can reduce runoff by about 20%, which is quite a bit for, we're just talking simply tree planting. And tree trenching and tree boxes can add even more to that capacity if those are, that type of engineering is needed on a site. So when infiltration is limited, if we have clay soils or we just don't have the space, there are options we can do. So rain barrels will retain water, and this is sort of that every little bit helps type of thinking. But over a landscape, if enough homeowners do this, it can benefit quite a bit to help with those heavy rain events. And then things like bioretention cells and infiltration trenching to build in a lot of capacity to hold water and let it slowly infiltrate. And then finally I have green roofs up here. So not necessarily an infiltration practice, but something that helps slow down water, increase evapotranspiration, and also really useful for battling heat islands and cooling water down. So one of the feedbacks that was given during the first webinar is that maintenance considerations were top of mind. And I think that's really important to think early on about the maintenance of these the infrastructure. In past projects that Huron Pines have done, we have had some issues with maintenance in the long term, especially when it comes to managing plantings and that landscape design. So it does take about 2 to 3 years for most native plants to fully establish. And after that, they can be quite easily managed. We have a lot of people partnering with schools and garden clubs, which can be really great partners, especially in those early years. But we've also found that really depends on motivated individuals, whereas, cities kind of have to be thinking about long-term solutions if individuals aren't there. So the recommendation, right, work with engineers and organizations like the Watershed Council and Huron Pines to help develop long-term plans. And while we might want these lush gardens, like in the upper left, sometimes it's not practical to have too many of those. So taking that into consideration, that oftentimes just a native grass monoculture can be helpful as well. And the other thing to point out is that community perception is key. And it's kind of interesting, while no one seems to notice a slab of concrete, as soon as you tear it up and start planting things, everyone has an opinion. So just kind of taking those things into consideration when we're thinking about long-term maintenance of these. So I wanted to point out, this all sounds good, and how do we get there? I think there's a lot of support in with watershed and groups and conservation organizations, but I also wanted to draw attention to this program that Huron Pines facilitates called Lake Huron Forever. So this is communities on both the Michigan and Ontario side that have come together to try and build capacity within communities to manage stormwater in the long term. So it's based on the philosophy that first we would engage, initiate dialogues in communities about the resources that these community needs to take action, which can be assessments and inventories and linking people up with technical experts, and then activate. So how can we find these resources to actually get these things on the ground and to move things forward, like stormwater ordinances and things like that. So, and then sustain. So the long-term protection of Lake Huron will be dependent on collaboration across sectors and neighboring communities. So hooking up community leaders to share challenges and success stories, and also resources, is part of the philosophy there. So we talked quite a bit about the environmental benefits to green infrastructure, a little bit on the social. So we point out that there are a lot of increased recreational opportunities, also just an increased and better sense of place and community pride can come out of these, especially when the community is involved from the beginning. And then economic factors. So we don't really have time to dig into this too much today. It could be a whole other workshop or meeting. But there are plenty of studies using data over the past 20 years that show the installation cost to green infrastructure versus gray infrastructure are lower when you're thinking about managing the same amount of water. And then there's kind of more limited data on operation and maintenance costs, but overall it looks like with the literature that is less as well. We also see increased property values when these practices are implemented, as well as increased property values of adjacent lands. And then the website at the bottom from the EPA is a great one. They have compiled cost benefit resources on that page. So a great place to look at what could be the economic reasons to do this, and also tools to calculate comparison for specific sites when you have something in mind. Finally, the last thing that I wanted to talk about, a great way to build connections to our natural resources and community is place-based education. So place-based stewardship education is an initiative led by the Northeast Michigan Great Lakes Stewardship Initiative. And these projects bring students out into the community to learn to be stewards of the environment and take active role as community change makers, and at the same time incorporate specific curriculum standards. And a specific example of this is our work here in Pines and Michigan Sea Grant with the network, partnered with the Agre Sims School District. So last year, the high school environmental science class spent a whole year researching green infrastructure and assessing site characteristics, and then actually engineered and designed and installed a rain garden on their campus. And these students are younger students that came out to help with the planting and also had say early on in plant selection. So it was a really positive experience, and the community came out for that. And then this current, 2019-2020 school year, the environmental science school class did that again, and they designed a bioswale that for the city's Riverside Park, and worked closely with city officials to do that. And they took it above and beyond and actually wrote proposals for funding their plant purchases and hosted a community visioning session about the park. So a lot of great connections there. Unfortunately, they weren't able to install their bioswale in the spring because of the pandemic, but we should be able to do it this fall using social distancing. So just a great example, and there are interested teachers in Cheboygan. I just talked with one last week, so could potentially be a great partnership when the city moves forward on stormwater management. So kind of race through some of that so we can make up for a little bit of time. I'm going to stop sharing now and take any questions while Nate sets up his presentation. Jennifer, if you're asking something, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. So the question I had was on the maintenance for planting of the bioswales or like a rain garden. What is the procedure to maintain them? Do you have to replace them, or do you trim them? What's the process?
Sure. So it depends a lot on the initial design. The ones that I was referring to, the first few years took some weeding, extra watering and that sort of thing. If you have native shrubs and things like that, you can reduce watering with mulch, but just decrease weeding, but still need a lot of water and TLC those first couple of years. Longer term, over time, these depression-based infrastructure like rain gardens and bioswales will slowly fill up with sediment that they're capturing. So there is some maintenance there in the long term that needs to be cleaned out. Other infrastructure that has overflow pipes and things, those are going to be similar maintenance to other gray infrastructure that will deteriorate after. They should have a pretty good life, but do need to be assessed and cared for.
Sam, I had a question. So with green infrastructure versus gray, I feel mainly the stuff I've worked with is normally you're designing to try and achieve a certain amount of flow that you're trying to convey. With green infrastructure, do you find more often that you're kind of limited to the room you have when you're trying to do it in like more dense areas? And so does that become a factor when you're trying to design for a certain amount of flow, or is it mainly just like you're limited to area?
Yeah, I think you definitely can be limited by the space that's available. And I think when you're addressing it, you're thinking about it not so much as flow, but as capture. You know, how many volume, what's the volume of water that we can capture here that we won't have, you know, standing water and then that'll infiltrate. So the design and the storage capacity is really what you're looking at after calculating what sort of volume and the flow too, right? That rate that it's coming off of these surfaces is really important.
Samantha,
Yes,
this is Jason.
Sam?
I have a
Oh.
question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Jason.
Do you have any other communities that you work with that are nearly 100% impervious because of clay?
I think, no, I don't have any that have as much clay as Cheboygan. There are some areas of, we work with Alpena and the city of Belgrade that's showing you, do have some areas that have some poor infiltration and also some high water table, which also makes those solutions difficult, right? If the water table is sitting too high. But yeah, clay is definitely going to be a major factor here, and some additional engineering will, you know, have to account for some of those areas.
Yes, Sam. This is Claire Schwartz. And just to add to maybe your answer for Nate too, a lot of times, most times, in my experience, green infrastructure is designed for the smaller storms anyways. So you're looking at your first inch of runoff, or you're looking at your 1 year storm for calculating a flow rate, for example. The largest I've seen is like the difference in volume for a 2 year storm. So you're talking the smaller storms, not like the 10 year, 2,500 that we're used to building our conveyance systems for in our flood control, so that they can be smaller and still be effective and do what they're meant to do. And then, yeah, in clay soils too, you're not going to get the infiltration, but you can get the filtering effect from green infrastructure, which is just as important for the water quality. And then with the plants, so if an underdrained BMP with clay all around it, the plants in there will help with some of the uptake. So you will get some volume reduction. Studies have shown, not as much obviously as if sand, but it's better than nothing for sure, for sure.
Thanks, Claire. I think we can move ahead to Nate if you want to start your presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you, Samantha. I'll share my screen here. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
All right, so hi everyone. I'm Nate Coffin with Hubbell, Roth Clark, and we're working with the city of Cheboygan to do some improvements to the water and wastewater infrastructure. So to give a little background on the city of Cheboygan, they service a population of around 5,000 people. That's of the 2010 census. They own and operate their own 9 MGD wastewater treatment plant. So that MGD is 1 million gallons a day. And that's their peak flow. So that's the most that they can take in. On an average day, they get around 2.5 MGD. They own and maintain their own sanitary sewer system, and that includes Inverness Township as well. They own and maintain water distribution system. The city underwent sewer separation in 1979. So for the sewer separation, the city used to be a combined sewer system. And by that, I mean their storm and their sanitary flows both went to the same system. And during large rain events, if they had to overflow, they would overflow to the river. But we now know that the better practice is, just for example, just environmental, water quality. The better practice is to have two separate systems. So to have a sanitary and a storm. So in 1979, they separated from that combined and they put in two systems, a sanitary and a storm. One challenge the city faces is maintaining old infrastructure. So with old infrastructure, the city has to spend more time reacting to any water main breaks or sanitary sewer collapses. They have to spend more time reacting to these things as opposed to having preventative maintenance, which would save them time and money in the long run. And HRC's current involvement is improvements to the water and wastewater. And there's three main projects, and that's what I'm going to be outlining in this presentation. So a little further background to start, HRC did a meter study in 2019, and this essentially involves monitoring flows in the sanitary sewer system. So the goals of this meter study is you want to identify districts or areas in the city that are contributing excessive I&I, which is infiltration and inflow. And I'll explain that further on the next slide. Another goal is to, once you identify these districts, you want to prioritize these districts for investigations. So this area here, when we concluded this meter study, we actually found that the entire city, the entire system was contributing excessive I&I, but we have to prioritize based on what's feasible at the moment. So these red areas you see here, these were the areas in the city that were contributing the most I&I. The green is the least, and the yellow is in between. Another goal we wanted to do with this meter study was to estimate the amount of footing drains that may be connected to the sanitary sewer system. So older homes tend to have footing drains connected to the sanitary system since it was a combined system back then. And then newer homes tend to have their sump pump hooked up to the storm system. And so any homes prior to the separation that occurred in 1979, it's possible that these homes still have footing drains or their sump pumps hooked up to the sanitary sewer system, which is, unwanted water that we don't want in our sanitary system. So sources of I&I, I'm going to go through a couple examples. So starting with infiltration, you can think of infiltration as, infiltration sources as any unwanted indirect flows into the sanitary sewer system. So the first example being a broken lateral. A second would be a root intrusion, either at the lateral or in the sanitary sewer main pipe. Another source could be a faulty lateral connection. So this could be from improper connection install. A cracked or broken pipe. And a deteriorated manhole. And so a lot of these, this 1 through 5, it's pretty typical with older infrastructure. Sometimes, if you haven't looked at it in a while, these things tend to pop up. And so inflow sources, we can think of these as any unwanted direct flows into the sanitary sewer system. So first example being a roof drain connection. So you can think of, as a downspout connected to the sanitary system. Footing drain connections, like I mentioned earlier. An uncapped sewer cleanout. Storm cross connection that could appear from improper separation in 1979. Or a faulty manhole cover or frame. And so talking about these inflow sources, potential inflow into sources. So for example, the faulty manhole cover or the uncapped cleanout, these are exacerbated in low-lying areas where water can pond over top of these. And I've got a couple of examples I've got an example of both the uncapped clean out and a faulty manhole cover frame that I can show you in the following slides. But these are exacerbated in these low-lying areas, which, typically if I'll be able to explain it in the next slide. And as for infiltration, this is exacerbated when the water table's high. So looking at this figure here, we can see that the water level here at the river is roughly the same as the water table. And so if we think about the city of Cheboygan, so the Cheboygan River, given the river and lake levels are so high right now, if you've had time to be in the city of Cheboygan, you'll see that sometimes the river level is high enough that it's going over the boardwalk. So we see the river levels this high. We also expect to see the water table is this high as well. And so to tie it all back, we concluded in the 2019 meter study that these red areas here, these were where we thought we were seeing the most of these infiltration sources and these inflow sources. So this next project that I'm about to explain is we're going out and we're setting out to try and find these things. So this first project, and this is the one that myself and Jennifer are mainly associated with, is the Sanitary Sewer Evaluation Survey, or SSES for short. So it consists of 9 total project tasks. The first one being cleaning and televising the siphon. So here in the city of Cheboygan, this is State Street. This is their drawbridge here. The city has a sewer pipe that this is their only connection from the east to west side of the city. So one of the things we want to make sure is that this is functioning properly, and it's such an important area since it's the only connection of the east to the west side. Another task, the second task, was manhole inspections. And so that's exactly what it sounds like. Is we go to the manholes in those red priority areas, and we open them and kind of just get a feel and take a look at what's going on in there. And we're looking for things that you kind of see here in these pictures. So starting with this top left, this is a faulty lateral connection. So you can see it's just draining a good amount of water here into the sanitary system. So this would be unwanted infiltration here. Looking at this second picture, this is a manhole that is on the bank of the Cheboygan River. And so you can see in between these bricks, we have a couple leaks that's coming in from the Cheboygan River. This third picture here, we don't see too much evidence of any I&I. We see down here kind of there's it's a little wet right here. But this main thing is, this is another thing we look for during manhole inspections, is there's obviously a lot of debris inside this manhole. So this is something that we would like to remove to be able to promote conducive flows for the sanitary system. And lastly, this fourth picture here, you see this massive root intrusion. So this massive root ball is actually coming, this is around a house lateral. And so this root here is structurally, it's structurally not good for the manhole. And then also we know this is, infiltration can get through here since a root got through here. But another thing to think about with this root here is this is in a manhole. However, if this was in a pipe or something, these things can create blockages in the sanitary sewer system. So these are some of the things we want to find, and we want to find these before we want to prevent this from blocking a pipe, doing a complete blockage on the pipe, because that can cause problems upstream. The third task is smoke testing. This involves blowing white smoke into the sanitary sewer system. And we're looking for anywhere that the smoke is going to appear in the city. And anywhere that you see white smoke come out, that is areas that I&I can get into the sanitary system. So looking at this first picture, this is actually a perforated manhole cover inside an auto shop in the city. And so when we blew smoke into it, we found this. So any water that gets in through there is going to the sanitary system. The second picture here, this is an example of an uncapped cleanout that normally, an uncapped cleanout, if this was elevated these cleanouts are only 2 to 4 inches in diameter. So not a lot of space for I&I to get in, but you see here, it's inundated in this barn right here. And so this area on the lawn here is actually draining into this uncapped cleanout. And so that's even more I&I than just that 2 or 4 inch diameter pipe that will be getting into the sanitary system during rain events. Sort of the same idea here in this third picture. This crack right here, when we blew smoke, we got this crack in the concrete joint here in this driveway. And so any runoff that's coming down to this joint and is most likely getting into here, and we know that this has potential to get into the sanitary system, since when we blew into the sanitary system, the smoke came up here. And then lastly, this fourth picture is another example of, you know, this manhole cover isn't to grade. And so this entire area, once during a rain event, if this starts to pond, this isn't just draining this 2-foot cover, it's draining this entire area and could be going to the sanitary system. Another task is cleaning and televising the sewers. We'll be televising them to look for any pipes and any cracks in the pipes and stuff like that. Outfall inspections, the city's outfalls from their combined sewer, we want to make sure those are working how we want them to. Wet weather flow observations. This is where we go out and we open manholes and we look in, we get the water level and during rain events to see how that differs from normal flow. Another task is the groundwater elevation survey. These are areas in the city that we're placing groundwater tubes just to get a feel for how high the water table is right now. And any pipes below this are of interest because, you know, if there's cracks or anything, you know, that's a potential area for unwanted infiltration. Another task is a downspout connection survey, where we go to buildings and we look at their downspouts and we want to see where they're discharging to. And lastly, GIS updates. We're just staying updated and make sure the city has a proper working map of all of their assets. So that was the first project, and that's the one mainly related to storm in this workshop, I would say. So I'll touch on these next 2 projects just for information. So the second project is the wastewater treatment plant improvements. So the city's current existing conditions is they're using their original equipment from their 1978 install. And so this original equipment is starting to outlive its useful life, which is forcing constant maintenance for the city. NPDES requirements, these are National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System requirements that have to be met by a wastewater treatment plant. And it can be challenging to do without proper working equipment. The city uses chlorine gas for disinfection. They have an old sludge removal process. They also have an outdated building and lab, since this is a building made in 1978. So the improvements that HRC is working with is we'll be replacing their influent screening. We'll be replacing their grit removal equipment. We'll be adding an oxidation ditch, which is a better method of removing pollutants. We're switching from from chlorine gas to UV disinfection. We'll also be adding a sludge press as opposed to their old sludge removal process. So the sludge press will be able to compress the sludge into a cake, which can be taken away to a landfill. We'll be installing a new clarifier and just general building and lab updates. So here are a couple pictures from their current wastewater treatment plant equipment. This is their pollutant removal mechanism here, and this is their driver for it. And so this you know, what's making this go, this is, you know, off the ground right now. And so when this happens, the city has to come out and fix it, but this is time that they can't be using this. And again, this is just due to old equipment. This is their initial screener. You can see the belts here, you know, rusted. This picture here on the right is during a high rain event, the wastewater treatment plant basement has to flood to try and keep up with, you know, the high inflow they're seeing during rain events. And here is 2 pictures of electrical equipment that are just fried. And again, it's, you know, the old original equipment. And then lastly, the water system improvements that we'll be doing for the city. So we'll be doing well house and well improvements. This picture here is a typical well house. The city has 3 of these. And the water will come in from a well in here, gets disinfected, and goes out to the distribution system. So we'll be doing improvements on both of those. The city's also putting in a new water tower. It's going to be located here at the corner of Garfield and McDonald. So their current one is on the west side of the city. They'll be putting a new one in on the east side. And then original one on the west side will be refurbishing. And we'll be also doing improvements to the street that it is on. So here is their existing water tower. This is Mill Street. It's a high traffic area for the city. They'll be replacing water main here, and they'll also be resurfacing the road. And lastly, we'll be putting in a water main extension. So here at the same existing water tower, there's going to be a water main extension going down through here for any future developments that come in this area that will be able to hook up to the city. So potential or future studies for the city, this HRC will be involved with is first one being a meter study, much like the one in 2019. Developing a corrective action plan where they'll take our recommendations from what we found in the SSES and allocating money for rehab. We'll be assisting them with funding or finding funding. And long-term GIS assistance, which could be done by this group here, this Rural Community Assistance Program. And potential storm sewer investigation. So this is a map created by Tip of the Mitt. This is their east side drainage system here. And we're finding that, you know, this is impacting more things than we originally thought. And so HRC may in the future be assisting the Watershed Council in reviewing the east side drainage system with the goal of improving stormwater drainage and water quality. The current condition of stormwater conveyance is limited, so homes with sumps tend to connect to sanitary sewer and attempt to alleviate flooding on their property. So parcels in here may have their sump pumps connected due to the limited conveyance of flow currently. So all these connected sump pumps could be a large source of I&I and could potentially inundate the treatment plant during storm events, much like that picture I showed earlier. All this added flow increases strain put on the wastewater treatment plant. So we hope upon completion of our current projects, we can work with Tip of the Mitt and generate useful ideas on how to solve the current limited issues with the city's storm water conveyance. And so if anyone has any questions, myself or I'm lucky enough to have my project manager here with me as well to answer any questions.
I just want to say, great job, Nate. And just so everyone knows, the procedure that we're investigating the manholes is through NASCO's MACP program. So NASCO is the National Association of Sewer Service Companies, and MACP is Manhole Assessment Certification Program. So that's like the idea is to standardize the way that everyone looks at manholes, because you can appreciate if someone goes and like has a category of good, fair, poor, two people could assess it differently. So the idea is this program is supposed to help standardize assessment so that it would be the same between whoever assesses it. Generally, there's still some subjectivity in the program, but it reduces a lot of it. So there's a ton of categories that we assess, like looking at the manhole and identifying all the deficiencies that are within the manhole. So I just want to throw that out there so everyone realizes that's how we're inspecting them. Oh, and let me just say, so the pipe assessment, again, that'll also be per NASCO's PACP, Pipe Assessment Certification Program. And that type of work will be, we're anticipating that would start in 2021. Now that we've identified all the manholes, we'll be able to update our GIS. And also, in addition, a plan is to approximate a certain amount of I&I that each one of the deficiencies could be generating, probably for a 10-year, 1-hour event. That's how we'll look at it. So, and so the idea is, you know, based on everything we found in the priority area, you know, there's this much I&I that we're estimating. And that helps for a number of things. Primarily, you look at, you know, cost-effective removal. And I think everything that we found will be cost-effective to remove. So it also will help, you know, prioritize, and also for the city for, you know, funding and managing that type of improvement. So, and then the same, I think, idea will happen with the pipe assessment. We'll go through, and at the end of the day, we're going to give the city a list of, here's all the pipes that you need to fix. And then probably we'll prioritize it, so they'll have, maybe it ends up being, you know, a 10-year plan or something, because it probably is going to be very expensive to fix everything in the city. So it'll have to be prioritized, and then, you know, they can handle it on a plan to just fix stuff as they can.
Nate, I don't necessarily have a question, but I think after Samantha's presentation and your presentation, this is a good time to describe why I'm driving people crazy saying that I love trees in some places and I don't like trees in other places. So I give permission to plant trees to create impervious, or to make those impervious soils so that they can drain, but I only do it in areas where we have plastic sewer pipes. If we have clay or other compromised pipes, I do not allow trees to be planted just because of the root infiltration. And then we've been planting trees where I have newer infrastructure and I'm not concerned about the roots. I wanted to make that statement because I know I'm driving everybody in the city crazy, but at least the planners should have some understanding of why I like and put them some places and don't put them in others. And if you just look at the map and the older infrastructure, you'll see where I'm putting them and where I'm not. The other statement that I'd like to make is that we don't just drain the city of Cheboygan. We take all the, well, not all the water, but a good majority of the water from the southern townships and convey them through the city. So we're collecting water from Bow Grant, from Inverness, and from Benton Township, and conveying them through the city to either Duncan Bay or the Eastern Drain or the Little Black. Cheboygan is an important bottleneck of all the stormwater from the high point south down to the lake. But you both did good jobs in your presentation, and it gave a good illustration of the challenges that we face.
Thanks so much for all of that, Nate and Jennifer. Some really great work. And Jason, I think that's exactly why we're here, everybody gathered, so we can get some of that specific information from, you know, the people that know Cheboygan the best. And so I think with that, Caroline, are you ready to do breakout groups, or do you want me to run that poll?
I am ready to do the breakout groups, but I thought, would you want to do your screen shares so you can show us how to use the annotation feature?
Okay. Let's do that. I'm gonna skip the poll for now since we're
Oh, that's right.
3:30. I think
Okay.
it's okay.
Yeah, you're right. I think we can skip the poll.
We'll talk about it in the discussion.
Right.
Okay, so from here we are going to go into our mapping activity. So just some background real quick, because we don't, so usually do this in person. We have a bunch of maps all over the table to refer to. So we're just going to kind of introduce these maps, and your facilitator in the breakout groups will have access to these if you do need to refer back to them. But this one is basically showing that yes, we do have a lot of clay to deal with. So all of that orange color or salmon color is clay soil. So, you know, definitely difficult infiltration there. And then, you know, have quite a bit of those loams and some sandy areas. So keeping that in mind as we go into this, the other one, so topography, you can see surrounding, as Jason was just alluding to there, you know, just south of Cheboygan, there's an incline, right? So all that water in the watershed is also coming down into Cheboygan, and then relatively flat within the city limits. So what we're gonna do, we'll have a map brought up, and we're gonna actually ask everyone to share ideas, and you can actually write on the screen. So we're gonna be using the annotate feature. So if you go, should be at the top of your screen right now. If you put your cursor to the top, it should have a drop down, and then it will have an annotate, or it might have more view options. Mine just says annotate, and you'll click on that. And then just to try it out, if you pick something like a stamp, you should be able to make marks right on our common screen. So if everyone unmute if you can't find it, otherwise, you know, we're gonna mark it up just for a sec, make sure everyone can figure out how to use that annotate feature. You can use a text box as well if you'd like to make a note on the map. Then we'll save a screenshot of that map, and then that's what we'll use to compile all of this information. Is anyone having trouble with it?
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling, Samantha, to be honest with you.
Okay. Are you, Caroline, what is the other option that we found? Sometimes it looks different post, so.
Oh, that's right. I think if you might have to hover at the top, Cam, if you can't see anything. And there should be like a green box, and it should say you are viewing Samantha Nellis's screen. Let's see. Other way.
It's okay. Move along,
Okay.
please. I'll try and figure it out.
And,
Go
and
ahead. I don't install
Samantha, the other thing, you know, if it's too much, Samantha and I can also draw for the group for the places that we know.
Yeah.
So if everybody, you know, or if somebody's on the phone or something, or doesn't have the capability to do that, we should get it worked out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think we're ready to go then, Caroline. You know.
Okay.
You have the groups set up.
So I have 2 breakout groups set up. There's going to be about 6 people in each. And then I think we'll still try to shoot for maybe like 40 minutes. And then I'll end the breakout groups, and then we'll just come back as a group and just have a quick sharing session of what we all learned and accomplished, and then we'll do questions, and then we will send out, you know, the final maps to the group, you know, in a few weeks when we get them all compiled. So there might be a little delay here while I press open all rooms, but then you should be in a little smaller group. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit that.
Cheboygan. I'm the DPW director.
Okay.
I do the water, the wastewater, the stormwater, and the streets.
Well, it seems to me we've got the right guy on our group then.
I hope so, but I'm out of answers.
It's
Well,
okay.
I got more questions than answers, probably.
sometimes that's the right answer. That's not a bad thing. But at least they're informed questions.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so yeah, I did try to split up the groups. I split up Tom and Jason, and so there should be a good mix of people. And I know a lot of places too, just talking to Kim and Jason, so I can help fill in stuff. So we're looking at an aerial of Cheboygan, and I am interested in the townships too. I know I don't have maps of those, but Jason, if you want to add anything, I can just take notes. So can you guys all see this aerial?
Yes.
Okay.
It's pretty small on my screen.
Okay. Let's see if I can make this bigger. The other thing.
Oh, well, you
Does
had
that
it.
look okay?
If you zoomed out to maybe 70%, I think that would be good.
Maybe I can zoom out a little bit more. Okay, how's that look?
That looks great.
Okay, so I will have to keep this as it is while we're annotating, just because if I zoom in or out, the shapes don't really change. So we're actually going to use green first. So if you kind of hover at the top of your screen, there should be a black window that pops up and you can click on annotate. And then there's a little color under, it's above format if you want to click on the bright green one. So here's a little test blob over here. So the first thing, we're actually going to think positively, and we are going to identify areas that are already serving as green infrastructure. So what are the places that should be preserved? So any green spaces, wetlands, if there are any existing rain gardens. I know the high school had been talking about having a green roof. Okay, I'm not going to move this again. Okay, did everybody find their little green wand?
Nope. I'm little caveat. I'm colorblind, so could you just tell me which row and which box is the green one, please?
Got it. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. It's in the color tools, it's actually going to be, let's see, the fourth row, any of those.
Fourth row or fourth column?
Oh, sorry, fourth column.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, there's no option for dashed lines, or I would have used that.
That's okay.
Caroline, mine's painting with blue color. Do you see that I added it next to you here?
Oh yeah, I did. If you click on format, Granetta, so there should be a blue
I
box.
see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want the green then?
Right. So it looks like somebody highlighted this green wetland over here. I would agree.
Yeah, that's where I was headed next.
So here's Major City Park, and it's a little bit wet, but it's kind of like a natural area. So that's a good spot.
Do you think, Jason, that that like, so we were looking at this, especially looking at that tip of the mitten map that had prepared general drainage directions and stuff. Like, oh yeah, that's a good one. The ditch lines on the side of the road, is that an opportunity to incorporate perhaps a bioswale, a series of, say, bioswales with an underdrain?
It could be, yes. And we have a large conveyance on the Sangster drain, which is right here as I'm drawing it. There's a lot of flow here. There's a lot of flow on the eastern drain, which is here.
Because that could possibly help you with, you know, detaining, but then you have the underdrain system that allows for the drainage, you know?
Yes.
as opposed to just hoping it all infiltrates.
Well, when Tip of the Mitt was discussing the Water Street parking, they were discussing permeable pavers, and I told them we couldn't quite, get the pavers to permeate into our soil. So we were talking about bioretention under it. And I think that's what we're going to have to do whenever we discuss this green infrastructure, is we're going to have to look at, bioretainment under whatever surface and give us a space to hold it and then discharge it slowly back into the river because the clay isn't going to do it for us. So I think we have to design these bioretentions into our green infrastructure in order to utilize any permeable pavers or that kind of conveyance.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, Jason, I have learned that Charlevoix did that with a parking lot in the past few years. So, there are some other communities that I haven't worked with them on that project, but I think we could, if you have any questions, maybe we could set you up with them just to check it out. But I believe a whole parking lot got that under drain. Okay, so any other places that need to be preserved or protected?
I would draw the whole riverbank.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Because all of those areas are extremely important to us, whether it's public or private, to maintain those riverbanks.
See if I can give it the right color. There we go. Okay. All right.
Jason, you were mentioning how you're draining a lot of drainage from, outside the city that it passes through. And this is like a thing, we did a huge study for the city of Midland. This is pre-dam failure, but it was post a big flooding event. And, the city's like a funnel for a massive, massive watershed. It all goes through the city of Midland. And like one of the big sort of things in my head was like, they really need it's a watershed wide type of control, because even if the city did all kinds of stuff, there's so much draining to it that if the upstream communities don't do anything, they're going to flood. So I'm just wondering, is there any way to somehow engage the upstream communities and be like, you need to retain your stuff a bit better and slow it down and infiltrate?
Yes. So Jennifer, we actually are in a 319 planning process with the this watershed here in the city of Cheboygan, and then all the way up to Mullet Lake, where Marty is from. And so, yeah, I think that's a good point, and we can, put that in our final recommendations after this project, that part of that planning process and eventual 319 money, if it does go to those cities and villages in the upper watershed, it will hopefully improve things in Cheboygan. I think that's a really good point to make.
Well, and I think it's nice that Cam is here, but Cam has a difficult position because we don't have, a mechanism for him to fund his own drainage into the city. He doesn't have an arm of labor, so he usually has to ask the city or the county or the state for help with drainage. So establishing a drain commission that has funding would be beneficial to the areas outside of the city of Cheboygan. And especially difficult is even maintaining those watersheds. They're getting grown with big trees that I can't maintain. And that's the overall arching theme is right now, it doesn't even convey like it shows on the map because of the overgrowth that we can't keep up with.
Right.
So, we need to get in there and cut down vegetation so the water flows like it was intended. And we just don't have the manpower to cut vegetation out of these, water conveyance sites.
Right, and what I've talked to Cam about is I wonder if some of the water conveyance could be turned into water storage. I don't know how we would do that, but if there was enough room you know, we would want to have the vegetation there to soak up some of that water, but you're right, it would have to be, it would be useful in some places and not useful in others.
So there's no, like, they don't have defined drainage districts, like within the county that, like, that you would pay the county maintains, in other counties, they maintain the drainage district, and people who are tributary have to pay based on their percentage of land tributary to the district.
Exactly.
Oh, that's not fair. Why don't you have that?
I know, we might need you to help us make the case, Jennifer. Okay.
Right now, we're maintaining the dam structures that, you know, as the last stop into the city. So I have structures that are technically outside of the city that we maintain because they slow down the water coming from the south. But we could barely maintain the stuff that we have in the city, let alone run out to county dams and repair them. But we're doing it now. But we need help. We can't continue to overburden ourselves.
Right. Okay, so should we move on to the next color, which is red, and we're going to look at areas that need improvement. So I know we're going to have a lot of circles, and then we can talk about what types of solutions might work.
The whole east side. Isn't it?
That's what they often tell me. Okay, can you guys still see that aerial?
Yeah.
Okay. Carlos, now we're using red. I know that's not an easy color. It's the first row, second column in. So we're gonna look at problem areas.
That one?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, and for some reason it won't let me choose that. I don't know why.
Is that you, Jason, painting the whole east side?
I'm painting Frogtown, what we call Frogtown.
Hey, that's my neighborhood.
Where your pump stations run constantly?
Yes, we have 2 pump stations in there and they run constantly.
Okay, I'm gonna highlight the Water Street parking, wherever that is, because that's a parking lot right on the river. I'm gonna say it's right in here somewhere.
It's right here where I put this little, right above the G in Cheboygan.
Oh, right up there. Okay, I see it. And then I know, so Cam told me that this was this part of the creek over here on the right on the edge of Cheboygan, the western edge, is a closed culvert for that creek. So we actually talked about daylighting that creek, because then it would get you'd get some more habitat value out of it rather than just a stormwater conveyance system. And yeah, that's gonna mean more mosquitoes, but also, you know, maybe some more fish or something. And I have seen fish in the Little Black River too. I've talked with Samantha about improving it for fish habitat, because we've talked about where, you know, the money is in some of these more environmental goals. And so if we can somehow include, you know, making sure that the water doesn't go straight to the wastewater treatment plant and right into the sanitary system, maybe we can get some benefits for a couple different problems.
Mhm.
What else is out there?
Well,
I would say
the sanitary sewer system must be a good for fish habitat, because they get fish at the bar screen at the treatment.
yeah, right. And here, I think this is the I always get confused between, oh yeah, eastern drain, that's just kind of standing water right now. And the Butler drain is a sheet piling drain that's basically standing water. So in the last presentation or the last workshop, Claire showed us a place in Lake Huron, and I can send you the pictures, Jason, where they had a drain just like the Butler drain, and they changed it so that it was just rocks. And there was an under drain that would take up some of the water table, and when it was dry, it would actually drain to that under drain. And it looked a lot nicer and actually safer than the sheet piling, and it seemed like a similar problem. So I'll have to show you that one.
Up until today, that Butler drain and the eastern drain were both flowing backwards into the city. Today, there is no flow in either direction.
Oh, okay, wow.
So we have been taking water back in almost all of June, July, and August.
And Jason, what's this right next to the marina? There's like a high part of land and it's all turf grass, and there's like concrete kind of rocks around it, or not rocks, but concrete slabs.
Yeah, there's a parcel next to the marina. Currently, the city is trying to take ownership of it, and it was part of the county's property next to the marina. Some of those concrete structures were part of their old gas and oil tanks to fill the boats, but they're redoing all that, and they are considering selling the property to the city, and the city would like to add it to the park.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. Let's see. I know that there's no green belt in this area right here. It's all just turf grass and overrun by geese. A lot of these road ends, the parks have a bunch of trash and pet waste. Just gonna mark a couple of these. Oh yeah, I think there's a park by Great Lakes Tissue, which would be right here, I think. And I know there's a DNR property with just turf grass. All right, any more areas for improvement? You can always come back to this. Okay, so the last one is places where we can retrofit, or places where there is going to be future development, places that we should think about green infrastructure and infiltration before something even gets built. So it could even be like, we know that maybe there's a road that's going to be redone, and how can we, incorporate some of these ideas into a project that's already going to happen. So that color is going to be blue, and it's all the way on the last column on your little package of colors there. So the 5th column.
Well, you've got Mill Street. Could they do something there?
Is that the one that's always flooded, or which one is that?
I think it's sort of south.
Actually, I should mark that because I think Nate told me that this street is always flooded, he said. Oh yeah, it's down here somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm drawing it right now.
Oh, there you go. Blue is not good. How are you going to differentiate from your lakes? You should do like pink.
You could do want to do purple?
Okay, yeah, something.
Purple's in the first row, in the middle column. And actually, there's some poop at the bottom of this one. Okay, purple's our new color.
nearly all the growth is going to be south of town.
Right, yep. I'll write that on here.
Do you have, can you do things like, I mean, some places, they might, for soccer fields and those type of things, they'll allow that to also be a place for like storage when it rains, and then, you know,
That's a good idea.
drains out. So I don't know if that's a, maybe with the city, it might take too long to drain out. I don't know. I see probably, I don't know if that's a school in the sort of southwest corner. Like, sorry, in here, I don't know if that's a school or not.
My screen's frozen. Let's see. Yes, I think there's even a school, like kitty corner to where that little purple box is between Loomis and Southwestern. There's another school to the west side of Loomis in that there's like a track over there.
Yep, that's
like
the
that.
middle school, high school, and then Bishop Baraga Catholic School are all kind of from western to the city line, city limit. And yeah, those higher areas might be better for longer term storage than like the soccer fields down by the lake, because I'm sure the water table is right up to the turf at that point right now.
We'll be able to tell you. We got our 18 gauge groundwater tubes once we get them. Once we get them all installed. Poor Nate, he's been chipping away at it every time he goes up.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I haven't been back home since winter, so but I imagine with the lake levels how they are on the Lake Michigan side. I'm down in Grand Rapids, by the way, but I'm a Cheboygan hometown boy. Yeah, and Jason, I think you had spoken earlier or asked earlier about other communities that have a high amount of clay, or was that Nate?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay. I know in some of the Southwest Michigan communities in Ottawa County, they do have a huge issue with a big clay cap because it's like right at the surface there. Very similar geology to Northeast Michigan. So I can, if you want to share your email or something, I can send some contact information to some of the folks in Ottawa County, as well as some of the Grand Rapids people who we work with.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna pop into the other group really quick and see how they're doing. We could spend another 10 minutes here if we need to, but I'm gonna pop out for a second.
So Jason, do you know if, so it's Cheboygan County, right?
Yes.
So do they have like a drainage manual or?
River Watershed, or it's the watershed. They've blended together several waterways over the years.
Yeah.
There's Cemetery Creek, and there's Salmons Creek, and there's Smith Creek. There's the Little Black itself, and there's several tributaries to the Little Black. It's all watershed.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Samantha, I'm just checking on you guys. We're nearing the end of our exercise and just wanted to see how much more time you thought you needed, if you needed more.
We can wrap up and share now. Yep.
Okay, maybe want to say like 5 more minutes so you can decide what you are, or who's going to be the speaker for the group.
Yep.
Okay, all right, I'll head back into the other room, and then I think you get a minute warning when I close out of everything.
Okay,
Okay,
thanks.
I'm gonna pop back out.
You're given with which to do, and yet we all seem to feel and allege that the environment's very important to us up here and a big driver of the economy and everything else. So I just want to thank you for the hard effort you put in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But that's exactly the reason why I'm going to retire as soon as I can. It's because it's the expectations of council and public of what I can do with nothing that is very stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty stressful. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up what we came up with here.
Was that your first thanks?
No, usually I drop to the floor about once a month when I get a call. And it's not a complaint.
Yeah.
Then I gotta make sure I'm awake and not dreaming or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they'll call and thank me for something, and I gotta make sure that I'm not sleeping or something.
Okay, so I just checked on Samantha's group, and they're pretty close to wrapping up. So normally when we would be in person, we might be in even smaller groups, and each group would get the chance to present to the larger group of what you learned or what was your main takeaway, or just kind of a summary of what we talked about. So I'm wondering if anyone would be willing to volunteer to talk to the group about some of the problem areas we identified and maybe some solutions. Anyone? I mean, I can see all of you, you know that, right?
I would volunteer, but I am the guy that always talks about stuff that I need money for.
It's true.
I've become that guy. So
Okay.
if you want to throw me under the bus again, I'm used to it.
Luckily, Jason, I think this group is going to be the most receptive. These are the people that are going to help you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop the breakout rooms. So everyone's going to head back into the main room, and then Samantha should lead us through the wrap up.
Caroline, I just want to let you know I have another call at 4:15, so I'm going to
Okay.
drop off in about 10 minutes. But thank you for
Okay,
letting
sounds
me.
good. Yep. All right, see you in a minute.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're just going to share quickly kind of what we talked about and should have identified someone to share back with the group. If people have the capacity to join via video, now would be a good time so we can have an open discussion, and feel free to take yourself off mute. We're not worried about background noise and stuff. Nate, do you want to start with our group? Oh, you're on mute.
Hi. So do we have the map to look at, or?
Yep, I'm gonna bring it up. Yep. Go ahead and start talking. I'm having a little trouble getting it.
Okay.
Up.
So the one that our group thought needed attention was the eastern drain. And then also Sangster, there's a big interceptor there. It's a high, I would say, storm traffic, I guess how I would say it. It's a big area right there. So that's like just an important connection that we should make sure is, running smoothly. And then another one we kind of thought of was just north of First Street on the east side. The water level is about a foot from cresting over the road there. If there's a way to you know, put something there to send it elsewhere that can handle it before it crests over the road and picks up, you know, more, you know, runoff that way. That might be a good idea as well.
And I do have the map for the other group. Samantha, did you want to show the map that you guys made?
Yeah, so it's pulled up, but when I go to share, it's not an option.
Oh,
So I'm not, I haven't
let me
run into
see.
that, so.
Oh, that's weird. I don't know what to do. I don't think anyone's sharing.
I would just like to say it delights me to see so many young people struggle with technology. You're not alone.
I don't know. I don't know what to say right now.
We even did a run through and didn't run into these problems.
It's the story of my life. Inexorably, that's where I end up.
Yeah, all I could do, I can make you the host or withdraw your co-host permission, but I don't think that's going to help. I can do multiple.
No, go ahead and bring yours up.
Okay.
If you can.
All right, can you see our map? We had to use purple because we thought that blue was too close to water. All right, and Jason volunteered to be the speaker for our group to show off our highlights.
I think he was conscripted. There's a big difference.
He was persuaded, maybe.
That's okay. I'll discuss our issues here. I agree with Nate that the eastern drain, I spent a lot of time because I got a lot of complaints from people that in the past we would just dig the ditches out, and all that did was it was the neighbor's turn to let the standing water sit in front of their house. And then we dig, you know, a block down so that the water would sit in front of their house. But the overlying issue is that I need the eastern drain to be about 30 inches lower than it is in order to convey all of the water out of the, you know, the area that we call Frogtown. And the tip of the Mitt's map, I can't make the water convey the way that the flows show because of the bottleneck at the eastern drain. So what happens is all the stormwater flows up to the eastern drain, but a lot of it will end up flowing back through Sangster Creek, cut across, and go over to Duncan Bay because of the trees and debris in the eastern drain. The other area of concern that we have is, you know, along the river, I have concerns just because it's so close and so low lying. We actually have an area of Lake Street right now that's flooded that I forgot to draw. But the tributaries are, depending on how much rain we get out of area, a lot of times it surprises me because we might not get a large quantity of rain and all of a sudden we are getting large amounts of water flowing through the city, and a lot of those storm drains are connected, and I get backflow, and some of the ditches are filling up, and I get calls to come clean their drain because the water's not flowing, but it's actually flowing backwards because we're getting so much water in. So some of these drainage systems need to be looked at. The purple areas that we drew were the areas of growth that we think that that we would like to look at. I'd also like to add any of the projects that we're doing. You know, we talked about Mill Street just because we're doing a project on a street in the city. It makes sense to coordinate these projects. So I drew the new tower in purple because I don't know if there's anything green that we can do with a new tower. I also drew in some of the play areas. When we discussed the soccer fields, I drew the soccer field next to the well. We also have a small development next to the school that they're looking at putting in housing, so I drew that. Most of the growth will be south of town, so we made a purple block south of town. And then, you know, at the beginning, we drew in green the areas that are currently wetlands that we would like to preserve as wetlands. So the city owns 95 acres next to the treatment plant. There's currently a preserve next to MacArthur Street. That is the green section where it says Duncan Bay. We also drew in green in the eastern drain because we need to preserve that. It currently isn't working correctly. So those are the areas that we would like to take a look at, and also our areas of concern. We drew the whole area of Frogtown because we need to redo that drainage, but we have a lot of concerns in the city. Overall infrastructure, we have 100-year-old water mains, we got clay sewers, we have a sewer separation that was in 1979 that on paper says that they've eliminated all of the interconnections, but we know that, you know, not to be true. So although on paper it says we're separated, we know that we're going to find some areas that are currently not separated correctly. So that's one of the things that HRC is helping me with, is to find those areas that we just don't have time to investigate. So that will be pivotal as well. And is there anything else I forgot that we talked about in our group?
I think that was a very good summary.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that point of considering these while you're planning for other redevelopment, you know, so they can be done at the same time is really important. It's often really tough to go back and retrofit, you know, green infrastructure design into existing things, especially if you just spend a bunch of money on them. So I like that. Did you guys come up with any ideas of ways that, you know, we could use some of these green infrastructure practices with some of the concerns, especially these things that you put down in red?
Well, the reason I didn't, you know, like paint the whole city red is because there are areas of the town, especially on the west side, that we could implement these improvements because the groundwater isn't, you know, 3 feet below the ground. So I think, you know, in some of these areas where Nate is helping to monitor the groundwater depth, some of these are only 36 inches below. So even putting a bioretention doesn't really help us if the whole thing is flooded all the time. So I didn't draw the west side in red because we have areas on the west side that could use bioretention, that could use some of these because the groundwater is well below some of the areas that we would put some of these storage tanks.
Yeah. Oh, those are my dogs. One thing that we talked about on the last workshop that Don showed was actually storage above ground level in some of these places. And so I wonder if that could be something for Cheboygan and in the places where the groundwater is high, and it was basically it was like a bioretention filter box for roof runoff from a gutter, but it was above ground. So that would be interesting to explore here. I was going to say, Jennifer talked about putting drainage under some of the green spaces that are already there, like the sports fields, maybe some of the parks.
Are we all frozen?
No, I
Frozen.
think it's
A lot of people are frozen now. I'm gonna stop sharing this just in case.
It's a tried and tested method because they tell me before these were installed, you used to be able to take your boat down Mackinac Ave in the spring because it would just let too much water through in the spring. And because we have those retention basins that we maintain, you know, it doesn't flood every spring. So if we replicate that example, maybe on a smaller scale through the city, where the large amounts are held behind a berm, and we give ourselves a pipe of a known diameter that doesn't allow flooding, that could help us to repeat that process throughout the city to capture and then slowly discharge those storm surges.
Yeah, yeah, but you can even have like and that's why I don't know like spatially how much space you have, but all along that ditch system, you know, along the roads there, it could be like a continuous, you have the drain underneath continuously, like an enclosed sort of thing, but you have a whole bunch of series of bioswales, and then you get your water quality thing that people want, and then hopefully maybe some reduction in like peak flows and slow drainage out.
See,
But the one thing,
I can kind of dream up these things on the west side because I got elevation. And so I can get sedimentation, I can get some of those things, but on the east side with it nearly flat, it's hard to dream up things that, you know, will go over a hump. So
yeah.
it's almost like I need to, you know, work harder on the east side, but I don't want to pump water. So the east side is going to be a challenge because I don't really want to install pumps to convey stormwater. On the west side, I got elevation, so we have lots of options to create a step fall or a pond for sedimentation, or we can use gravity and elevation to our advantage. But on the east side, I just don't have that ability.
Well, that was one thing I put under my question here was, so no stormwater pump station on the east side.
We might have to have one. It's, but right now we can barely maintain the pumps that we have. We barely have money for those. So stormwater pumps are kind of out of the question because I need more sanitary pumps. So
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is try to convey it without pumpage at the moment. But that might have to be the way that we deal with it if we can't lower the eastern drain to lake level.
Yeah, you were mentioning like making the eastern drain 30 inches lower.
Yes.
So where would that invert be once you get to the lake? I mean, isn't that part of the issue is the lake levels are so high, you can't drain your stuff out?
That's correct, but the eastern drain actually has fall out to the lake. So in order for me to fix or try to fix most of those drainage issues, what I need to do is dig a canal from the lake back almost to Duncan. So I want to eliminate that fall and create a channel. I know
the
that that's,
uniform slope all the way.
yeah, and then I want to drop the tube at Duncan and Eastern, and I can drop it 30 inches to lake level.
Oh.
So, but you know, I almost need a green infrastructure project, like a kayak launch at Duncan and Eastern, where I'm pushing in a kayak into that canal so they can go out and kayak. I need a reason to dredge the eastern drain back to Duncan so that it's lake level all the way back there. And then I can get, I don't know if I'm going to get the 30 inches I need, but every inch would help me convey that water out of that area.
Yeah, Jason, I've seen presentations before where you've marked an area over by the Coast Guard station that you said could be a restored wetland.
Yes.
Are you still interested in that idea? And do you think, you know, do you think that could be a possibility near any of those ditches? I mean, I know that there are some residences around them, but like, you know, in an ideal world, if you had the space, do you think a wetland, if it was more wetland and people knew it was wetland and it was going to stay that way, would that help?
Well, I think behind Coast Guard, we actually created a wetland that wasn't there. And I'm getting complaints from those property owners. because what happened was we put in storm drains right to a land that it built up sediment and started trapping water. It started trapping water years ago, and we can see it from Google. If you do Google over time and you go back in time, you can see that it was viable, buildable land that, because of the city's activities of storm drainage, just out to those areas, it just started ponding and building up sediment and trapped that into a wetlands. So I think that the Nature Conservancy that built on MacArthur is doing an excellent job of maintaining the natural wetlands. And I would like the city to relook at how we push the stormwater, because I think that we created wetlands that wasn't necessarily there before.
I'm gonna jump in just because we're about a half hour over time. So I just want to give people an out if you need to go. Thank you so much for being here. I have about 10 more minutes I can stay on if people still had other things they wanted to discuss.
I do have those polls, Samantha, if you want me to throw those up really quick.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Do you want me to try that?
Yeah, maybe just that last poll, maybe.
Okay, I think it's, the actions. All right, here we go. Which of the following actions can you commit to right now to move this important work forward? Tell a friend or colleague, research topics, install green infrastructure on your own property, attend another event, or tell an elected official.
Hey, Jason, I just want to pop in real quick while we're doing this. I'm looking at the Google map right now, and at State and Eastern, Google Map has something called East Avenue Park. I've never heard of that before. Lived in Cheboygan for 20 years and never heard of that. That might be new. Is that something that is public property, or is that private?
That is city-owned property that most of our city-owned property has to be designated something.
Okay.
So I think that they took that large parcel and called it a future park.
Gotcha.
Because some of the other parcels that we have are smaller and wouldn't be conducive for a park. So, but I'm advocating to spend money on the parks that we currently have instead of creating another park that I can't fill with equipment.
No, I understand that. I was just wondering if that is an opportunity site to alleviate some of the Eastern Avenue drain, you know, putting in some sort of retention basin, bioswale combination to kind of divert it to the east, and then, you know, once it hits a certain level, bring it back into the drain. I know that's kind of a low-lying area as well, but
things that we can, you know, have even a more informal meeting about, you know, talking about potential solutions and ways to move forward. So, Caroline, did you have any closing?
I think that's
Jennifer,
it.
do you have something?
I really like these maps you put up, and I'd like to have them if they're on GIS, or even if not, we can overlay it. The land cover one, and then the soils. I need that.
Oh, I can send those to you. And then Samantha, I think, is going to compile everything from today and make another layer. So if you want that layer, we'll have that new one coming out soon. Sound good? Okay, well, thanks everybody for your participation today. Thanks Nate and Samantha for speaking, and Samantha for facilitating so well. And we'll get back to you guys soon on what we talked about today, and hopefully some next steps too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Sorry for the
Thank
technical glitches.
That's
Yeah,
all
I got
right.
kicked off a few times. All right, thanks you guys.
good one, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.